Welcome to Pixalearn. We offer expert-led courses for CPA, EA, and other professional certifications to help you advance your career.
So let's take the first topic. Now see, one thing is very clear. You know that everybody knows that US has the concept of green card, right? And you also know that there is something to do with being in the US for some time. Just like in India, we have this concept of resident and ordinarily resident and non-resident, right? Now, in the US, which part of income are you going to be taxed on depends on what is your legal status in the US. And the best example that I want to give you guys when you're doing this is imagine, I'm a huge fan of Godfather movies, okay? So imagine you are in that family, the Don's family, and the Don has to see whether you are a good, let's say, a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law, and whether you should be included in the family or not. So imagine the same situation now happening in the US. You have a closed family, and you are now thinking whether you should be allowing somebody to be a part of your family or not. So we say, see, if you are born and brought up in India, in US, and now this was there earlier, but now with Donald Trump coming into picture, the birth thing has gone away for people who are not US citizens, like 2 or 3 generation up US citizens. Okay, so we have now complicated the US citizenship more because a lot of people from various parts of the world were misusing the birth concept in the US. So earlier it was like if you've taken birth in the US, you'll automatically become a US citizen. Now that's no longer the case. There are more steps. Your parents should have been citizen for, and you have some hierarchies defined there, then only you can become a US citizen. So first thing is very clear. If you have the US citizenship, obviously you are our family member and you will have to pay tax on worldwide income. And they have a number that everybody has who is a US citizen. Can you tell me what that number is? A number is allotted to you the moment you become a US citizen. So what's the full form of SSN, Vicky? What's the full form? Social Security number, right? So one is, if you are a US, so see, tax recognizes certain terms. What are those terms? First term is, are you an alien in the US or not? The moment you become a US citizen, you are no longer an alien. And if you're no longer an alien, we welcome you to our family. You are a part of our family. And so first term is, are you a tax alien or no? The moment you're a US citizen, you're not a tax alien. And if you're not a US citizen, you're technically termed as an alien. And now this alien can have either a resident or a non-resident status. Now, what makes you a resident alien? See, if you have a green card. Now, what's a green card? Green card is like, imagine if a new member of the family, and imagine you are that Don and you are apprehending whether a new person should be admitted into your family or not. What would you do? You're trying to give that person a grace period, and that person would come and stay with you for some time, and you're going to observe their behavior. And then after a particular number of days, you would say, okay, I think we can give it a try. So there are people who've been in the US for some time, quite some time, and US have accepted them as lawful immigrants and given them a card called green card. So these are people who've been characterized and recognized by US as lawful immigrants, and they have been given green cards. So we say, if you do not have US citizenship, do you have a green card? Because if you do, then you become a resident alien. So if you're a US citizen, you're not an alien. Then you're a member of a family, you have to pay tax. If you are not a US citizen, then do you have the green card? So what's a green card? It's a card that certifies to you that you're a legal immigrant in the US. And then the terms. So these are the terms that you have to remember. You're not an alien. You are a resident alien. If you do not have a green card, issued, then the US, in order to determine whether you would be taxed on income in the US or throughout the world, would ask you, were you there in the US for a sufficiently long period of time? If yes, then we would say, okay, now you are going to be promoted to maybe a resident alien and then promoted to a US citizen very soon. So the question that we have to ask you is, were you there in the US for a sufficiently long time? So we call it technically as a substantial presence test. What does this test say? This test says, have you been staying in the US for a substantial period of time? And they've defined. take current year, take so many days in the current year, and then you go back last couple of years, and then you put a weightage on the number of days that you spent in the US, and then you add that up, and then you calculate how many days were there. So you have to be in the US for a certain number of days in the current year and certain number of days in the preceding years. They've given you two criteria, both of them met. You say, yes, substantial presence test is met. We will do this in just some time. So if you are a resident alien, which is possible even if you either stay in the US for a sufficiently long period of time, or you've been staying in the US and you've been issued a green card, then the technical term is resident alien. So first is citizen, second is resident alien. If you have neither of these, you're not a US citizen, you do not have a green card, and you were not present in the US for a sufficiently long period of time. If all the three are no for you, in that case, we ask you, did you arrive in the US in the current year? And why is this case decided? Because see, there are situations where people get married. And when they get married, they may be married. So generally, it's not possible to time your marriage on 1st of January, right? So you may be married during the year. And one of the person may be meeting the conditions of married filing jointly. So one of the persons may be there in the US. Somebody new joins that person in the US. And that may be by marriage, but that person is now married, right? So the couple as a whole do have a chance to file a married filing jointly return. Now, if that happens, even the other person would automatically get the resident alien status. See, so what I ask you is, if neither, not a citizen, not a resident alien, then you ask yourself, and not substantially present in the US. So think about the person who recently got married and moved to the US. That person is the only exception where you will be given a choice. Do you want a dual status aliens? If yes, then it's different. Otherwise, you will become a non-resident alien in the US. So you have three criteria: not an alien, resident alien, and non-resident aliens. Now, these people who are non-resident aliens, people like me, let's say if I go to the US only for 15 days at my sister's place, and I end up filing returns for her friends and earning money, and if that money is beyond a particular threshold, my status would be a non-resident alien. And in order to file a tax return, which is Form 1040, I will have to provide an identification number called the ITIN number, and I will use this to file my return. And in that case, the return that I will file will only talk about the income that is generated on the US soil, which is the US source income. If a non-resident elects to be treated as a US resident for the purpose of filing a joint return with the spouse, and so what they're saying is, in case if you're not a dual status alien, if you're a non-resident, because I did not follow any of these steps, but the moment I get married and I choose to file a married filing jointly return, in that case, that's the only case when I will not be treated as a non-resident alien. I would be filing a married filing jointly couple with my spouse. So two things. All of this was done. Why? Because we wanted to answer the question, will my sister pay tax on the income that is generated in India? The answer is yes. And not only my sister who's a US citizen, my friend who may be having a green card, or my friend who would be moving in and out of US for a sufficiently long period of time to satisfy the substantial presence test. All the three categories so either you're a citizen or you're a resident alien. In both the cases, you would be taxed on worldwide income. It doesn't matter where that income is being generated, in the US, outside US, you will have to account for that income in the US. And yes, Vicky was correct. You have treaties coming into picture. You also get certain deduction directly in the US to reduce your tax incidence. Okay, so we are going to talk about deductions in the EA paper. Otherwise, remember that all of these people who've learned about treaties, they're the people who will help you avoid or reduce tax legally. But all of those people who've neither satisfied any of these tests and not married and moved to the US, for all of us, people like you and me, we would be getting something called the ITIN number, and we would be filling up the form like non-resident aliens. You will see every form in the US will have. So Form 1040 has another variety called 1040NR. Okay, I'll tell you how to cull out these forms, but when these forms will be culled out, you see you have a 1040 NR. That would be for non-resident aliens. What is an SSN? It's a number which is called a social security number that has to be issued to all the US citizens. And ITIN is individual tax identification number. Anybody who does not have a social security number would have to obtain an ITIN, and only by filing an ITIN would you be able to pay taxes in the US via filing Form 1040. Yeah, 1 second, Vikasha. Let me just complete this thought and then I'll take your question. Who is a dual status alien? It's a taxpayer who may be able to choose to be treated as a US resident for part of the year. So this is not typically tested in the US, but remember there is a possibility that I can think of being in the US as a part alien. Okay, so that is a possible for a part of the year here and for a part of the year somewhere else. But this is not something that we're going to really deliberate a lot. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, Vikash, you had a question? What was your question?
For this married MFJ, married filing jointly,
Yeah.
are both people required to earn income, or is it like one
No.
person can earn income and both can get the benefit or something like that?
So it's not required that both of you are working. Anyone working, see, it's not working, it's earning. Anyone earning money, you will have to pay it. So you are treated as one entity. You're not treated as two separate entities. Like in India, I have a separate entity, my husband has a separate entity, and we file separate returns. In the US, you become one entity. So your income, her income, both gets together. Even if your income and no income, that is also okay. Is it okay? So you don't need to, because you will see that there are certain tax exemptions that you get. The tax slabs are favorable to you. And there are certain limits that would be relaxed to you if you're a married filing jointly couple. So anyone can earn money. There is no problem. Both can earn, but I've given you certain thresholds which would be applicable for both. In fact, there was a very good podcast that I heard that spoke about a lady who's Black, and she realized how at a lower income levels, married filing jointly couple was actually not leaving the Blacks with a lot of money because the provisions were not that conducive. And she's probably written a book also on it. Let me see if I'm able to cull that podcast. I'll share it with you guys. Okay. But yeah, you become one entity. Doesn't matter. Both are earning. One is earning. It will be okay. Now, one more concept of what is a substantial presence test. I'll give you a question, and I think that question will satisfy. Look at this question. Okay. So there are certain threshold limits identified for which you would be, if you're meeting those limits, you would say that you have met the substantial presence test in the US. For the current year, let's say I'm talking about the year 2003 or 2023. You have to be in the current year for 31 days in the US and including, so this is very important, this is including the current year, not excluding the current year, okay? Including the current year and going back to further years. So this year, last year, last to last year. Add up the 3 years with a particular weightage. 1 day will be regarded as 1 day for the current year. 3 days will be regarded as 1 day for the last year. And 6 days will be regarded as 1 day for the year before last. You add up all of these, that number should be at least 183. So both the conditions have to be met. So if both the conditions are met, we say that you have successfully followed and met the substantial presence test. You will get an ITIN number and you would be a resident alien and you would be paying tax on worldwide income in the US via Form 1040. Look at this question. Tell me whether this person is going to file return in the US or not. Okay. You were physically present in the US on 120 days in each of the years 2021, 22, and 23. So years 1, 2, and 3, let's call it like that. Determine if you met the substantial presence test in year 3. So I want you guys to give me the answer, yes, no, and then tell me how many days are you getting for substantial presence. Just calculate it, let me know the answer. Yeah. everybody, see, most of the questions that we're going to do in class, we are going to slowly increase the level. And the idea is after whatever we have done in the class, there should be no question in your database for which the concept is not done by us. You should be able to solve everything from your database right after this session that we're going to have today. Okay. Jay, can you calculate again? See, current day is 120. It will be treated as 1. Last year would be 120 divided by 3, which is 40. And last to last year will be 120 divided by 6, which is 20. So I take 4 to 6 and then 120 is 180 days. So even though the first criteria is met because the person stayed for more than 31 days, but the next criteria is not met because this year with the other 2 years preceding, you did not satisfy the requirement of at least 183 days. So in this example, the criteria is not met. Criteria of substantial presence not met. So you are not a resident alien. So what is the net nutshell of this? Will that person be filing return? You never know. If there is some US-based return, you will be filing with an ITIN number, but you are a non-resident alien. So what is your status? You become a non-resident alien. Is this clear to everybody? Anybody, any questions? Yeah, Vikash, what's your question?
So, I mean, how is this dual status alien, is this calculation done for dual status alien? How does that work then?
No,
because
so you're
dual
talking about
status
the
alien,
relevance. You're talking about the relevance?
yeah, relevance, and if
if
it is applied.
Yeah, listen. If you meet this criteria, then you will be having to file US return for all the world income, right? So if I'm in India and if I'm going to the US every 6 months, okay, so 4 months, right? If I'm staying in the US for 4 months every year for the last 3 years, I will have to file a return. If let's say this 183 days was met, then I would be having to report my Indian income also in the US. So my worldwide income would become taxable in the US. But if I do not meet this test, then only the amount of income that I'm generating in the US will become taxable. Is that clear? In the first case, I'll be filing a resident alien form 1040. I will still be getting an ITIN, but I'll be filing form 1040. In the next case, I'll be filing form 1040 NR, and I'll just be paying a tax on the US source income, in the US source income. Is that clear? Vicky, is the relevance clear? Why are we doing this?
No, I understood that if you meet the substantial presence test, you're taxed on worldwide income.
Yeah.
If you don't meet it, there are two scenarios where you either become a dual status alien or a non-resident alien.
So
I understand it.
Yeah, but see, this we're not digging too big, and this is an exception. Okay, there are very few people who will be getting this. That for part of the year you become a resident, otherwise you don't become a resident. Okay, general rule. Think about this. So if you're not married, so you're not moving to US for the first time, then you are, so a person like me, if I'm just going on a vacation coming back, I'm not married, so I don't get an option to get a married filing jointly. Then it generally becomes a non-resident alien. Is that okay?
Okay, so the dual status alien is like a special, you may need to meet certain special conditions, and there are special separate requirements.
Yes. So we are not, I'm just letting you know that something like this exists, but that's not something that is very common, and you're going to get this often. Okay. So this has certain special requirements that has to be met. So general rule, we'll talk about citizen, resident alien, and non-resident alien. Is that okay?